After an accident, minutes matter. Your words and actions matter even more. You need help, and you need it now. This is David versus Goliath, brought to you by Dolman Law Group Accident Injury Lawyers, a boutique firm with a reputation for going head-to-head with the insurance company giants and putting people over profits.
Welcome to another episode of the David vs. Goliath podcast, here with my partner in crime, Stan Gipe. And today we have our esteemed guest, Michael Hoffman, who is a veterans disability attorney. And that kind of takes us out of our normal area of practice because Stan and I are personal injury lawyers. There's a lot of overlap between personal injury law and veterans disability claims, but they're not one and the same. And that's why we brought Mike on today to kind of clear up some of the confusion. You know, veterans disability claims have garnered a lot of attention in the last year based on Camp Lejeune claims, but they're not necessarily one and the same. There's a lot more to veterans disability claims than just Camp Lejeune. Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it, guys.
Yep, of course. So take us through a little bit of your background. What motivated you to get into veterans disability law?
Yeah, so I was in the service. I'm a veteran myself. I did it the old-fashioned way. So I went out of high school, enlisted, and did some time overseas, and then did a tour in Afghanistan. And I got hurt myself, and I had other people that I saw get hurt. And went through when I was in college. When I got out, I was going through the VA process myself, and I'm like, I had some musculoskeletal issues and a head injury, and I was going to the doctor every day in Tampa. I was living in Orlando, and I was driving to Tampa once a week, and I was there for doing therapy for a couple months, maybe a year at that point. And the doctor who I've been seeing all the time, is really smart, really good doctor, and she's like, "Hey, what's your service connection?" And I'm like, "I don't fucking know. What do you mean, what's my service connection?" And she's like, "What are you rated at?" And I'm like, "You tell me. Like, you're the doctor. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "You're an idiot." And I'm like, "What?" She said, "Go downstairs and fill out these forms and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, okay. I had no idea, at all. I just figured the VA will tell me what I'm rated at. They see me, they got my medical records, and I had no context or anything like that. And so I went down and started filling out the process, and it turns out it's like a much more complicated world in which to live in. And so I did it and still didn't know much about it. I was like, I'm smarter than a lot of people, and this is really fucking complicated and confusing to me. And I definitely don't feel like I'm getting what I deserve. So I started looking more into it. When I went to law school, I worked at a clinic that, Veterans Legal Support Clinic. And I just kind of got into it. And to go with the name of the podcast, I like fighting the government. So that was also a really big sell for me.
We all do.
Worked for them, so there was time to fight them. Yeah, but that makes it more fun.
In your realm, in personal injury law, most lawyers, they see a case against the government where it's like this because we're capped on fees, and they just become just these drawn out affairs on very simple cases. So what is a veteran's disability claim? And kind of distinguish that to a regular disability claim.
The difference between general disability and veterans claims is with general disability, it's kind of a lot more often an all or nothing proposition. With the VA, there's a little bit more specific rules on how the disability came about, but there's percentages. So you can be 10% for something, 50% for something, 100% overall. And so what has to happen is you have to have an injury in service or a disease from service that was contracted from the service, or that whatever your injury is was caused by that. So for example, in my situation, I had a back and knee injuries, but my feet were fine, right? So I got out, I was service connected for my back and my knees. And then after walking kind of funny and dealing with all this stuff and issues, my feet started getting really painful. And so eventually my feet ended up becoming service connected. And why that's important to understand is that a lot of guys will get this regular injury in service or this small, very small thing in service. And they're, guys are tough and, they're like, no, I'm fine. I never heard this. I just hurt my back. I'll be all right. I'm just getting older. But then when you start to investigate it, you realize, well, yeah, but if you hadn't hurt your back that way, if you didn't have that injury in your back, if you were able to do X and able to do Y, then you wouldn't have a problem with Z. And so the VA is, it's different because it's a lot more, you can be a lot more creative and things flow a lot differently than the other cases. It's a different level of, a different standard of proof and different standard of injury.
Understood.
Michael, let me ask you real quick. Can you have both a VA disability claim and a general disability claim at the same time?
Absolutely. Yeah. So VA disability is in and of itself its own thing. It's with Social Security and VA, they certainly help, having especially the VA, having been service connected will help with your Social Security claim, but they don't affect each other in a negative way at all.
So you could collect your full VA disability benefits and full disability benefits under, let's say, general Social Security disability, and they don't have any overlap or set off?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. You also can be 100% service connected, meaning getting paid the full benefit and be working, and be getting paid in the economy at whatever you're getting paid at it. Your ability to, or not your ability to earn, but your level of wealth or income has no bearing on it whatsoever.
Is there a specific length or duration of service before you're eligible for a VA claim?
No, I've represented guys in one that got hurt after 2 weeks in boot camp. Now, to be fair, that injury, they really got pretty badly hurt in boot camp, and it wasn't their fault, right? They got out. That was where the injury came from. But no, there's not like a specific timeline. Obviously, the longer, there's more stuff that takes place. But from an eligibility standpoint, the only real eligibility is that there is the type of discharge they got. So a medical discharge is fine. A general discharge is fine. Of course, an honorable discharge is great. Where you start to run into problems is if somebody has an other than honorable discharge or a dishonorable discharge, meaning they got in trouble for, something kind of serious, and they were asked to leave active duty. Those guys will have a little bit more of a struggle.
Meaning the claim gets scrutinized more, or how does that work?
So there's a bunch of extra steps that have to be jumped through. So you'd have to first try and get the discharge upgraded, and then there would be more scrutiny on the claim. It's a lot more difficult. It happens,
So
but
these
you
are
have
what,
to have
individuals
a
that
good
went
reason.
AWOL or just got thrown in the stockade at Leavenworth, or what is the...
Yeah, so, AWOL is a good example. A guy got redeployment orders. I'll give you an example from a case that I had, right? So guy was awesome. He served in Iraq and the invasion, killed it, man. He was did really well. He got a Bronze Star, which is a pretty serious award for a junior enlisted guy. He came out and was diagnosed on active duty with PTSD in like 2005, which, to understand how this works, in 2005, there was no such thing as PTSD. Like, nobody had PTSD. I mean, everybody did, but nobody did. They didn't talk about it. So to be diagnosed with it was pretty serious. He then got in treatment care during service, which again is very rare for mental health. And they were processing him out on a medical discharge because he couldn't do it anymore. He had seen some really, really intense stuff in the invasion. Anyways, while he's being medically processed out, he gets redeployment orders to go back to Iraq, like just out of nowhere. It's like the government's stupid and they weren't paying attention, and they just sent him orders to go back out, and he freaked out. He went missing. He went home, to his mom's house and hid out for a while. 94 days later, he turned himself in, and it was AWOL, and he was and they kind of railroaded him through the system. He was discharged with a dishonorable discharge, and it was, a bad look. He was barred from VA disability benefits, even though he had been through all that stuff because of that incident. When we took over his case, we had to get that overturned. So we were able to say, like, come on, like, the way he was discharged was nonsense. He should never have been discharged that way. Yes, he did something he wasn't supposed to do, but the guy was dealing with extreme mental health conditions. It was an extremely difficult situation he was in, and you have to show a little grace and understand that, like, that proves how disabled he was, is because he did that. A guy that, runs into the fire doesn't then, chicken out and run away. There was something more there, right? So we were able to get that case won and taken care of, but it was, like, to use your words, much more scrutinized and took a lot longer. But it happens.
So, soup to nuts, and I don't know if Stan had a question. I didn't mean to cut him off, but what soup to nuts, take us through a veteran's disability claim. How does it start? What is the process?
Sure. So it's not a specifically linear proposition like in some other cases, but what happens is and at whatever stage, whether they just got out of the service or they've been out for a while, they'll file a claim for benefits. Okay, so you file a claim saying, on a simple government form, I think that my right knee is bad, my left knee, my headaches, or mental health, whatever. You file a claim for the benefits. That claim goes into the VA, and the bureaucrats at the VA will review the claim and decide whether it's service connected or not. Sometimes they'll give you a little bit. Sometimes they'll give you, they'll deny everything. Sometimes they'll grant it. Once that claim comes back, they'll provide what's called a rating decision, which would be, in the general context, more like a judge's ruling on a motion, maybe something like that, right? So then that comes back and it'll tell us what's up. It'll tell us why. At that point is when it starts to get a little bit interesting. That's when we will decide which level, how we want to appeal it. The VA provides multiple appeal streams, is what it's called. So we can decide, hey, we like the evidence that's here. We just want somebody that's got a little bit more experience in the VA to review this file. We can do that. We can say, you know what, we want to add a little bit more evidence. We can do, and what we call a supplemental claim, and we can do that. Or we can say, screw it, we want to go right to the big bad judge in DC, and we can jump into that line. That takes, a little bit longer. So there's pros and cons to all of those. But the cool thing about the VA and the claim process is like it keeps bouncing around. So if you get denied, it's not over. We just can try a different route. And then if that route doesn't work, try a different route. And if we need to get more evidence, we add more evidence. We're not like barred by some statute of limitations or only getting one bite at the apple. We are encouraged and allowed to take as many bites of the apple as possible.
So how often, if you're involved from the very beginning and the, let's say the former service member does not go about it himself or herself, how often are these appealed?
So the initial claim is, regardless of who's involved with it, and from the beginning, almost always denied, or at least denied in part. Like they'll give a portion of the grants, like you won't get to your ultimate goal, right? They might grant you not at like 50%, but you're trying to get to 100%, right? So almost always, I don't know, denied's the right word, but not a complete and total grant of where you want to be. Almost always, regardless of who's involved. The advantage of having somebody involved that knows what they're doing in the beginning is that you can make sure that the case is set up properly and the claims are set up properly, so that when you do appeal it or when you do push forward, you have all of the things that you need to get it done, all of the right, everything's like lined up properly. That's a big differentiator. A guy that doesn't know what he's doing, a lot of veterans go through the VA process unrepresented, and guys and gals will show up and they'll be applying for stuff or not applying for things because they don't understand how it relates. They don't understand how the process works. And so when we're able to take somebody from the beginning, and most attorneys don't do that, we do. We take the case right from the start. And the reason is because we want to create the best possible outcome for the veteran long term. And so if you put a little bit extra work in the beginning and you build out the claim properly, you'll be able to do that.
Mike, I got a question for you. If someone's listening to us or they're a veteran that's out there, I mean, if you're in war, you hit an IED, you've got an amputation, you clearly know, okay, you've got a disability at that point. I've talked to several veterans, and almost every one of them has some sort of mental residual from their time in the service. They've got some sort of memory, sadness, something sitting out there. At what point does that sort of mental residual, I'll call it, rise to the level of becoming either PTSD or a compensable disability? What do people need to look for? Does it have to impact their daily living? When does it cross that line?
Sure. So that's a great question. So PTSD is a specific diagnosis, right? And that's kind of the one that we talk about a lot. That's the catch-all for mental health. But mental health is mental health, right? It could be major depressive disorder, general anxiety, mood swings, mood disorders, sleep disturbances, insomnia, whatever. Anything in the DSM-5 is service connected. As far as compensable, you're compensable pretty much right away. If you have a mental health condition, regardless of the severity of it, for you to have a mental health condition, there has to be some symptoms, right? And if there's some symptoms, then you're compensable. You might only be compensable at 10%, which is good for, $100 a month kind of thing, right? Or you might be compensable at 100%, which depending on your family size could be good for $4,000 a month, right? So you're compensable, it's just at what degree. And as a general rule, whatever the VA gives you, you're at least 2 or 3 ratings below or you should be at least 2 or 3 ratings above that. That's another good example of how this relates to your kind of more traditional personal injury laws. Like the first offer from the insurance company is rarely the right offer, right? If they immediately tender you, you got something, right? So if the VA says, oh yeah, you're 30%, I look at that, I'm like, you're fucking 70%. We'll figure it, let's look through this real quick and figure this out,
No, I've had in my own life here run into clients where I had one in particular that he had twisted his knee a long time ago in the service. Wasn't anything that really limited him, but it had always been sort of a nagging, lingering type of injury. He got into a car accident and really exacerbated that injury, that initial injury he had from the service. How does that play out? Now, once you have an injury that may not be debilitating, but then gets exacerbated through a subsequent incident, can you still make a claim on that underlying injury?
Absolutely. So those are a little bit more they're going to get denied a lot of times. They're going to say, oh, it's this injury from this car accident. You were in a car accident, or you fell at work, or whatever. But we win those all the time because if not for the initial injury, right, then that later injury might never have taken place or might not have been so bad. It's like the fruit of the tree or whatever, whatever they call it. But yes, absolutely. And mental health is a good example about, physical stuff is more objective, right? You're looking in there and they can see it. And as long as the injury was there before, it's made worse by it. Absolutely. We can increase that. It doesn't matter why it's bad now. It matters why it started. With mental health, you see it all the time. It's like, every person on earth, I want to go back to that a little bit. Every person on earth deals with mental health conditions. Every one of us, every person in this podcast, every person on earth has some mental health thing. Whether we talk about it or not, it's a different story. But there's that stigma behind mental health that's stupid. We all have it. Okay. Every veteran has it a little bit extra because, we went through a little bit different stuff, right? But there's a million factors that relate to people's issues. So like, a lot of these guys, it's not just they had this mental health condition from getting shot at or seeing something difficult or whatever. But now, 20 years later, they've been through a divorce. Their children have had some issues. Their mother died, whatever, right? And a lot of that stuff that people are like, well, that's not related. That you're sad because you lost your job. Yeah, but why did I lose my job? You're sad because you're fighting with your wife all the time. Yeah, but why am I fighting with my wife all the time, right? What's the baseline? So if we're able to establish that the mental health condition started and or was exacerbated by service, once you get that link to service, it doesn't matter anymore what percentage of it was caused by service. Now it's about, and this was the same with the knee or whatever, now it's about how bad is it now? So the first step is linking it to service, right? The second step, it's the level of disability. And once the link is there, it's not like, they're not associating blame to this defendant and that defendant and that defendant. It's just, you got the link there and then the injury's here.
Okay, now, kind of last question along this line. If a veteran's sitting here listening and they've got a physical injury from the service that just really creates pain, doesn't limit their ability to go about their day-to-day life, doesn't limit their ability to work, but they know it's there. Hey, I got a neck injury that creates headaches, I can work. Where's the threshold to make a claim in that situation?
They should absolutely have a claim already. If there's painful motion, is a claim, especially if it's causing headaches. Headaches are debilitating, man. Like, I don't know if you get bad headaches, man, but I'm nervous, Sam, but headaches mess me up big time. Like, yeah. If you have painful motion, it's a 10% rating. It's not going to be the end all be all of your case, but yeah, there's no threshold on it. If there's something, if you're feeling it, it's there. It's not like it's got to be, I got to walk with a cane or I got to have a neck brace on. If there's painful motion, there's painful motion. A lot of guys that are service connected are, able to do a lot of stuff. Like I can't run, right? But I can walk. I walk a lot of, 10,000 plus steps a day. I take my health really serious and I do that, but I'm not in the gym powerlifting, right? I have other guys that I know that do powerlifting in the gym, but they deal with a lot of service connected issues. And it doesn't mean just because you're able to do things and fight through things doesn't mean that it's not there. It's a misconception. A lot of guys are mentally very tough and, they refuse to be victims and they refuse to fight and they refuse to give up and they fight through things. And that's kind of the community as a whole. And so if we just figured, I can't claim this or I can't get compensated for this because I can deal with this, it doesn't matter. That's you're going to end up losing out on a lot and you're not going to be properly, it's not going to be properly adjudicated. What you need to do is people need to look at it and say like, yeah, yes, I can fight through this. I'm going to be honest about that. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm going to fight through this, but it still hurts. When I get home, I still have to ice my back. I still have to, do whatever else. It's all part of it.
Yeah. No. What are the most common fuck-ups? I like to call it fuck-ups.
Yeah.
You asked before we start if we can curse. So I love cursing.
Yeah.
Common mistakes that former service members make when filing a disability claim. Where can they possibly screw up their claim and what do you do to get around that?
So one of the nice things is even if they do fuck it up completely, I like that word too. It's the most versatile word in
I love it.
ESN. It's the best.
Constant.
It's the best fucking word. Yeah.
we
but
can do a whole podcast on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fucking A. But we can always add to it, right? We can always add a new claim. We can always add if they didn't file for what they should have filed for. We can always add. There's no statute of limitations. What it does is it hurts their effective date. But where people commonly mess it up is that they won't claim certain things because they don't think it's related or they don't understand it, or they will try to be too tough. They think, I'm fine. It's not that bad. Yeah, my knee is totally jacked up, but so is everybody's knee, right? They kind of going what we were talking about a second ago. They underplay it or downplay it. That's where people mess up. A couple of things that people do all the time. So you guys said headaches before. Headaches is something that is very good to be it's very good service connectable issue. And it's a good percentage. It's good, what I call chunk yardage to get a good rating. But everybody on earth gets headaches, right? Everybody gets headaches. So nobody thinks I'm going to claim headaches. They just don't think to do it. They think, oh, I've always had headaches, or my neighbor gets headaches and he wasn't in a service. And that's fine, but it's our job to figure out if we can link it to service. And just because you may have normally got a headache, or maybe your back would have hurt because you work as a longshoreman anyways, or whatever the issue is, if not for the service, it wouldn't be worse. So a lot of times what people do, the big mistake they'll make is they'll undersell how their service related to their situation. They'll downplay it. They'll be like, yeah, but I also had been in that car accident, or I'd also done this, and that's where, does that make sense?
Does. So let's look at the inverse. Is there those obviously who overplay it? Is there fraud involved ever in VA disability claims? And when do you see that?
Of course. People are shitbags, man.
In
just
every
because
realm. In every realm.
Just
so
because, listen, no, as a proud member of the community, as a disabled combat vet, as somebody who absolutely loves the guys I serve with and dealt with, there's some shady motherfuckers, and there's some stolen valor. Google what stolen valor means. There's a lot of people that are...
Yeah, I went down rabbit holes on YouTube watching 6-7 hours of stolen valor, guys who are walking around with accommodations and medals that are out of place. And you see it all the time.
Right. And the videos that you've seen are like the extreme examples, right? But most stolen valor is a guy that served, but maybe he didn't serve quite as well. We got him at these law conferences we go to. Everybody fucking is going to the Supreme Court next week. It's the same kind of thing. Overselling their service, right? So we have that. Yeah. We certainly have plenty of fraud, but it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it happens. You identify it. Every once in a while, I have a case and I'll be representing them, and I'll have to fucking pull out because I know that they're full of shit. But generally,
just like there's bad lawyers, there's bad apples everywhere we go. I just curious about that. I don't want anyone out there painting.
They have it, and that they have it, and sometimes that makes it harder, right? Like the guys that, the common concept or common thought within the VA system is guys going for it is the guys that actually need it don't get it, and the guys that don't need it get it, and it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil, or whatever the expression is. And these guys that are full of shit are in there every day. They're going to the doctor. They're not trying to live their lives. They're talking to the doctor all the time. My back, my knee, my whatever, So a lot of times the guys that we represent are the guys that actually really need it because they're not doing that,
Understood.
I got one more question. I just kind of playing some of this out. What do you do for, let's say you got a guy, he's got a clear physical disability, knows it, it's acute at the time of service, gets like a 70%. Let's say disability, real physical injury. Over time, those physical injuries cause depression, cause mental anguish, and the mental angst or anguish isn't related to something specific like a traumatic event in the service, but your limitations related to the physical disability. Is that mental claim related to the physical disability?
Absolutely. Would your mental health be as bad if you didn't have those physical disabilities?
No, can you explain them? Because how that works, going back for a second bite at the apple, once you realize you've got something additional going on?
Yeah, so if you came to me with a claim on that, right? If you came to me and we were looking at this, like, hey, I'm dealing with this. I'm going to ask you, hey, how does this affect your mental health? How does your knee being fucked up affect your mental health? How does your back being fucked up affect your mental health? Like, I gotta give you an example. I like to pick on myself, right? I got a 6 and an 8-year-old, right? And I can't pick my kids up the same way other dads can pick their kids up. I can't run with my kids. I can't ride bikes with my kids. I can't do that stuff, right? It fucking sucks, man. Like sometimes I'll be watching my kids and I'll be like, have my brother-in-law, hey, can you do this for me? Or can you lift him up? And it makes me sad, right? It affects me. I wish I could do that. That's, that stuff like that rolls in. You'd be walking down the street, be like, oh man, those guys are playing basketball. I wish we could go play basketball. Sometimes it's like small stuff, right? But you miss out on things and it creates an effect. I can't work because I'm so physically injured. That causes depression. I'm young. I can't, whatever happens to different people. So we link mental health to service all the time, or to service via an injury all the time, how that affects it. And it's not to say that the only reason you're having a mental health issue is because you have a physical injury, but it absolutely contributes to it and adds to it. And yeah, absolutely. The other way to do it is another good example with diseases and stuff like that, or like, diabetes, heart issues, whatever, stuff like that, more general physical and medical claims is that, like, let's say you hurt your knee or your foot in service really bad. You worked out. Everybody in the service is in pretty good shape. You were in good shape. You got a really bad knee. Now you can't work out anymore. So what happens? You gain weight. Okay. Well, I gain weight because I can't do this stuff. Or I got depressed, so I gain weight. Well, weight gain can cause a lot of problems. Now all of a sudden I got sleep apnea because my weight gain or my mental health has caused my sleep apnea. Oh shit. Now I get service connected from sleep apnea. Well, sleep apnea, I'm having these irregular issues with sleep. That's caused my AFib or whatever, my heart condition. That's caused this, that's caused that. So it's like a tree. You link things to it. If not for this, then that.
Wow, it seems like a real slippery slope.
Yeah, but in a good way. It's a slippery slope in a bad way for your medical, but in a good way for your claim. Right?
Understood. Is there any misconceptions out there about veterans' disability claims you'd like to clear up that you see often that just, erroneous statements or misinterpretation of how veterans' claims work?
Yeah. So first of all, there's anybody who tells you they can make it go faster is full of shit or ignorant, right? Like, you go as fast as you can go. It's a federal fucking government. It's what it is, right? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't,
I only laugh because we went through this once and you said it even more colorfully when we were at a bar, but yes, go on.
Yeah. Like,
it's the same lawyers who tell you they're going to the Supreme Court next week.
Yeah, right. So, like, you got to be careful with that.
Stolen
so that's like a good
valor.
Exactly. So that we should create T-shirts. So that's a red flag. If somebody's like, oh yeah, we can get this done really quick for you. Okay, so that's an issue. The other thing is, there's a lot of people, and some of them are veterans. You talk about shady motherfuckers and scam artists. There's a lot of people joining this space that are not authorized or not lawyers, and they're not sanctioned by the VA, and they're predatory, and they got a bunch of money behind them and go out and get these cases or get these veterans to sign up with them, and they're very predatory. And it's important that if the VA requires you to be, or me to be certified within the VA. I'm actually at a conference right now for the National Organization of Veteran Advocates. That's why I'm doing this podcast in a kind of a weird spot. And you have to be certified and it goes through an extra screen at the Department of Veteran Affairs. And there's a reason for that, because VA cases are super different, and because the veteran population can be taken advantage of pretty easily. And so we want to give the federal government a lot of shit. I love to do that, but they are in some situations trying to look out for the veteran, right? There's a lot of people out there that are maybe making you think that they're lawyers or thinking they can provide a similar service, and they're stealing from veterans. So regardless of what attorney you sign up with, you want to make sure whoever it is that they are authorized by the Office of General Counsel for the VA. It's really important.
Understood. Another question I had, and it's while I'm watching on my TV in the background, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in Lebanon is on fire.
Oh, great.
I don't know if you knew that. Yeah.
Did not know that.
Veterans. It's a wild world we live in right now, especially in these unstable times. And who knows if World War III is on the precipice and what's going on in Israel. But, we heard about the presumptive conditions in Camp Lejeune. And I know we discussed this at the bar. This is after having several drinks, so my memory got a little faded. I need you to jog my memory from that night. What do presumptive conditions mean in terms of veterans' disability? Are there specific presumptive conditions? And I know how they were used in the context of Camp Lejeune, that if you have these specific conditions, we can assume it was caused by the toxic water at Camp Lejeune based on several studies that they did of the water, the aquifer. What do presumptive conditions mean in disability?
Yeah, so there's presumptive conditions for a lot of different things. So like the PACT Act, which is what brought Camp Lejeune into everybody's lives, was mostly based on burn pits and stuff that was toxic exposures that we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. Lejeune came into it, some more stuff with Agent Orange. So the VA's been dealing with presumptive conditions for a long, long time. Presumptive condition, a good example would be like the guys that served in Vietnam that were exposed to Agent Orange, right? Their level of disability when it comes to like diabetes type 2. The percentage of guys that served in Vietnam that have diabetes type 2 compared to the general population is, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's extravagantly different, right? It's so much more, right? Certain cancers with Camp Lejeune, certain cancers with these different things, where, like you said, through studies, through tons of data of veterans coming in and having these issues, the government said, okay, you no longer have to prove to me that it's directly related to service. We'll just say if you were where we needed you to be. So for Camp Lejeune, you were at Camp Lejeune for 30 days. In Vietnam, you stepped foot on the ground in Vietnam, or you're in the area now. It's a little bit broader. Or Iraq and Afghanistan, you were there for 30 days and exposed to these burn pits. that if you have one of these conditions, fuck it, we're going to say it's our fault, and so that's what the presumption is. So the initial service connection becomes easier because now we don't, we've been fighting cancel Zoom cases forever and winning them by arguing that, look, in this particular guy's case, in Matt's case, it's clear that it's as likely as not that the VA, or excuse me, that his disease was caused by, or his injury was caused by the water cancellation, right? In his specific case, we had to prove that. Now, I don't have to prove that. Now I just have to say he was there in every fucking veteran's case. It doesn't matter. It's presumed that that's what took place. It's kind of like when you go to a trial and you're not fighting over liability. Liability's been admitted. You're just fighting over damages. That's kind of the best way to look at it. We proved that you were there. Boom. That's done. The liability part of it's gone. Now we're just looking at damages. So now we're just deciding, well, how sick are you? What else was caused by that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've pretty much run the gamut on veterans claims today. So tell me a little about the firm. For someone listening now, and I can just say, whether anyone uses as a vote of approval, we send our veterans claims to Michael Hoffman. We send our workers' compensation claims to his partner, Adam Warner. How does one get a hold of your law firm? Tell us a little about the firm and the contact information.
Sure. So we started, our firm is called Warner, Hoffman, and Gregg. It's primarily owned by veterans, combat veterans. 70% of the firm ownership is combat veterans. Matthew Gregg was a JAG officer in the Army, did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was enlisted with my tours in my combat tour in Afghanistan. We're out of South Florida, but we represent veterans nationwide. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of veterans
claims in all 50 states.
All 50 states and all the territories, and yeah, we handle them everywhere. So our primary practice is VA disability, representing guys, and we started it. We were at a big firm before. We broke off on our own because we wanted to do things a little bit differently, be a little bit more focused on cases the way we want to be focused on, and be real tech heavy, be creative. I think the big differentiator between our firm and other VA firms that I'm friends with all these guys, like I said, I'm at this conference with them, is a lot of these guys are much more specific. They want a very cookie cutter type of case. We kind of get off on the creativity and being creative with cases and figuring out ways to cases that other people struggled with. It's like fun to fight them, and we wanted to do more of that stuff, and that's why we ended up doing this thing. As far as the contact information, that's a great fucking question. My email, my email is my name. My email is my name at WarnerHoffman.com, mhoffman@WarnerHoffman.com. Our phone number is...
That's Werner Hoffman, is WERNER Hoffman, HOFFMAN.com.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you guys can throw up the number afterwards, but pretty sure it's 1-800-320-HELP. But
okay.
But my partner.
So those listening out there, I promise you, Michael Hoffman is an incredible lawyer. He might not know his contact information. This guy gets lost, might not be able to get home. But if you have questions, just contact Stan or I. We'll get you in touch with Michael Hoffman. We refer veterans claims there.
I keep my card like this. If you just come up, pop it on your phone, and all of a sudden you got all my contact information. How many phone numbers do you remember? Come on. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not knocking you. I'm just throwing it out there. In case anyone did lose confidence, I want them to know this is the guy.
Yeah. So I'm also honest, so you can tell that's it, right? We didn't pause it.
Same. We understand our shit stinks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I appreciate the time. I appreciate you guys asking questions and asking great questions. And with any of these guys, the kind of one thing I want to follow up on is, like, before we let you guys go, is that VA disability benefits are one thing. Like, the money that people get, that's important. The percentage people get, that's important. But a lot of times it's a moral thing. Like, sometimes proving that this happened to me because of this, and it's not that's important to a lot of guys. And then the benefits that people get are pretty extensive outside of the VA disability process. So, like, depending on where you're rated at, guys are able to get no property taxes, send their kids to college for free. There's a lot of stuff there. And when we sign up to join the service, we sign an insanely one-sided contract. They're like, okay, you're going to come here, you're going to go wherever the fuck in the world we tell you, you're going to do whatever the fuck in the world we want at this period of time, right? There's two things that we get out of the contract, or three things. Very, very shitty pay. That's one. Two, we get education benefits. And three, we get disability benefits if injured in service, right? Or if there's something from service. And it's incumbent on us to hold them accountable and to take advantage of the benefits that we get. That one, I'm a big believer in using the education benefits that we get. Obviously, I did that. And two, taking advantage of the disability benefits. Because you made a comment a few minutes ago about, like, who knows, World War III, what's going on in Israel and whatnot, right? And in an all, not to get, it's not a political statement, but in an all volunteer service, meaning we're not drafting people, I have no problem with the president sending us wherever we need to go, whenever we need to go, right? That the concept being that, like, we joined, we knew what we were getting ourselves into. None of us are over here saying, oh, I shouldn't, whatever, right? But the government needs to understand the cost of war, and it's a lot more than bombs and bullets, And if we're not taking care of ourselves when we get home and not showing people what the cost of war is by going to the VA, by getting compensated properly, then it makes the cost of war too cheap. It makes the cost of war insignificant. And people are like, oh, fuck it, let's go. And it shouldn't be. People should, the war doesn't end until the last veteran that served in that war dies, So we just ended World War I, right? World War II is just ending now, right? Because these guys are still dealing with this as it goes through. And I think that's important. And I think the only way one of the ways to look out for our brothers and our sisters that serve with us is to go to the VA and take care of ourselves, because that helps to set the standard. I don't know if I'm explaining that perfectly. But,
amen.
But I feel really passionate about that. So, yeah.
Agreed. Well, appreciate having you on today. This wraps up another episode of the David vs. Goliath podcast. If anyone wants more information on Michael Hoffman, just contact me. You could always reach us at 833-55-CRASH. See, we know our phone number, unlike Mike. Or you can email me at matt@dolmanlaw, DOLMANLAW.com, and I'll happily connect you with Michael and his partner, Adam Werner. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Fucking show off.
Yeah, Mike.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So talk to you. All right.
Definitely.
This episode of David vs. Goliath is over, but your journey is just getting started. To share your story with us, visit dolmanlaw.com. That's DOLMAN law.com, or call 866-965-6242. The insights and views presented in David vs. Goliath are for general information purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. The information presented is not a substitute for consulting with an attorney, nor does tuning into this podcast constitute an attorney-client relationship of any kind. Any case result information provided on any portion of this podcast should not be understood as a promise of any particular result in a future case. Dolman Law Group. Big firm results, small firm personal attention.